I'm going to go to every road game, no matter what, like whether I'm playing or not.
The basketball world was shaken by stunning news just moments ago. It has been reported that Caitlin Clark, the WNBA's unstoppable force, has made a decision to completely leave the sport. This abrupt action follows a startling incident that nobody anticipated. So, was it a deeply personal turning moment, growing pressure from critics, or simmering tension in the locker room? The league is left reeling, teammates are rendered speechless, and fans are in a state of shock. Let's examine Caitlin Clark's shocking choice to leave the WNBA and its true cause. The WNBA was shaken by the earthquake. There would be repercussions from Indianapolis to every region of the sports world if Caitlin Clark left. The Indiana fever wouldn't be the only thing it would shake. It would break the WNBA's meticulously constructed business basis, leaving millions of fans devastated and in shock. But occasionally, even the brightest stars get to the point where they are too glaring. Clark, who is only 22 years old and sports the now iconic number 22 jersey, has developed into much more than just a player. She is the Indiana Fever's linchpin, their focal point, and their inspiration to keep going. Few, if any, have reshaped the sport as much as she has in her debut season since the WNBA's founding in 1997. Just her numbers seem like they belong to seasoned pros. 19.2 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 8.4 assists per contest. However, statistics can only reveal a portion of this. Narrative. She brought the Fever back to the postseason for the first time since 2016 and 2024, ending a 7-year playoff drought. However, a scoreboard cannot capture Clark's influence because her off-court accomplishments may be even more astounding. Ticket sales surged as soon as Indiana declared her their number 1 draft pick. Not by a small proportion, but by more than 400%. The Fever had to completely stop playing at lesser places because of how strong the wave was. Once a rarity, Gainbridge Fieldhouse was now completely full for game after game. Additionally, more than just the stands were filling up. Once, television viewers numbered in the hundreds every time Clark took the stage. Thousands of dollars abruptly soared over the $1 million mark. A few games even attracted over 2 million viewers, numbers that had never before been reached by women's basketball. She seemed to have turned a switch, transforming the WNBA into a cultural phenomenon as well as a sports league. Corporate America also took note. Numerous sponsorship agreements were made especially to capitalize on Clark's alluring marketability. These weren't the customary low-key alliances that women's sports had been accustomed to. They were significant sources of income, completely new sources of income that weren't there before to her arrival in Indiana. In just one season, Caitlin Clark had accomplished something that had been impossible for decades of marketing campaigns. She had turned the WNBA into an appointment viewing. She wasn't just elevating the league to a new level. She was also elevating the entire league to a new level and changing its economic DNA. This is evidence that sometimes a single player doesn't just change the game. She changes the game's place in the world. What invisible pressure drove Caitlin to this breaking point? And could they rewrite her legacy? Her true story is just getting started. Power, pressure, and the price of stardom. The surge Caitlin Clark has created in the WNBA isn't limited to the success of a single team that's changed the very lifeblood of the league. Ratings on television have skyrocketed. Sales of merchandise have broken all previous records. The WNBA now receives prime airtime and headlines from media outlets that previously only mentioned it in passing. It is now hard to overlook the league because of Clark, making her a world-renowned athlete in quick time. It is for this reason that rumors of a possible departure feel more like an impending earthquake than mere conjecture. However, what may motivate a player of her caliber to think about quitting the sport she is passionate about? The weight that is invisible is the answer, with so quick results. For Clark, the transition from college basketball's relative freedom to professional sports' harsher edges has involved more than just facing more formidable opponents on the field. Navigating a commercial machine that functions under limitations and regulations that the majority of fans are unaware of has been the focus. Despite Clark's profound influence, the WNBA continues to function under a salary cap that seems archaic. The most salary a player can make is about $250,000 a year, which is insignificant compared to the millions the league probably makes each year from her marketability. According to WNBA regulations, her rookie contract binds her to the Indiana Fever through restricted free agency and team options. These team protection rules have the unintended consequence of drastically reducing player movement. Dissatisfaction among athletes in other big leagues can frequently be resolved through contract renegotiations, trades, or free agency. Clark feels that the method is far less adaptable. Her capacity to change her circumstances would be restricted by the very regulations intended to maintain competitive balance, even if she felt trapped or underappreciated. Long before Clark arrived, and definitely before the league understood how drastically one player could change its financial fortunes, the collective bargaining agreement that governs these arrangements was negotiated. The financial structures established years ago no longer accurately represent what a top-tier, well-known athlete actually does. Like Clark does, there is a silent, complex conflict between what she contributes to the WNBA and what the league can offer under its existing regulations, which lies behind the applause, sold-out arenas, and record-breaking TV statistics. This disparity extends beyond financial considerations. It concerns autonomy, acknowledgement, and the changing meaning of worth in women's sports. However, is Caitlin prepared to question the same structure that made her famous or to leave it all? Stay put. You might be shocked by the response. Caitlin Clark at a turning point. When fame surpasses the system capacity. For players whose worth surpasses their salary, the game frequently becomes as much about contracts as it is about competition. This is the silent battle that goes on behind many of the greatest stories in sports, according to legal experts. The point at which a player's market value soars above the strict boundaries of a league's pay scale. The disparity is obvious in the WNBA, where the highest wage is far less than what an iconic player like Caitlin Clark makes from ticket sales, TV contracts, and corporate sponsorships. When that superstar's income impact eclipses that of a teammate's, the dilemma becomes even more acute. She is nevertheless subject to the same wage scale as everyone else. This disparity is more than just a statistic to Clark, whose every move on the court is televised to millions of people and whose jersey sales rule the league. It serves as a constant reminder of an unbuilt system. For a person such as herself, the human cost is another factor. Playing professional basketball wears on the mind in addition to the body. Clark is subjected to scrutiny that is uncommon in the history of women's athletics. Every pass, shot, and casual remark is examined in real time by analysts, shared on social media, and discussed by random people. When the game is over, that spotlight's glare doesn't go away. It accompanies her throughout her entire life. It takes more than expertise to maintain optimal performance under such circumstances. Even the strongest people may eventually find the mental endurance it requires to be tiresome. Thus, it's not surprising that rumors of alternate routes have started to circulate. Outside of America's constant reminder of an unbuilt system. For a person such as herself, the human cost is another factor. Playing professional basketball wears on the mind in addition to the body. Clark is subjected to scrutiny that is uncommon in the history of women's athletics. Every pass, shot, and casual remark is examined in real time by analysts, shared on social media, and discussed by random people. When the game is over, that spotlight's glare doesn't go away. It accompanies her throughout her entire life. It takes more than expertise to maintain optimal performance under such circumstances. Even the strongest people may eventually find the mental endurance it requires to be tiresome. Thus, it's not surprising that rumors of alternate routes have started to circulate. Outside of competitive pay, top-notch facilities, and a season that seamlessly transitions into the WNBA's offseason in America. It's more than simply a retreat for gamers like Clark. It's an opportunity to continue performing at your best while experimenting with new forms of professional autonomy. What occurs, though, if that freedom begins to feel like a prison? The truth is more startling than you might imagine. So stay with us. The statistics reveal a story that cannot be changed by applause when the league's face feels stuck. Given her enormous influence on the WNBA's expansion, ticket sales, television viewership, and sponsorship agreements, Caitlin Clark is worth millions of dollars per year. Nor in hype, not in forecasts, but rather in tangible, measurable facts. Additionally, the league she single-handedly improved gives her a small portion of that worth, even when outside endorsements help her financial account. She is plagued by this contradiction every single day. Although she is not the first WNBA player to face this pay disparity, she is the first to bring the league as a whole into the public eye while earning a salary that hardly compensates for the magnitude of her impact. In arenas that are sold out, fans yell her name. Every motion she makes is captured on camera, and broadcasters develop entire storylines around her. Behind the curtain, however, she is confined to a system that does not genuinely invest in her future and instead feeds on her reputation. That's the most painful aspect. Not only the cash, but also the absence of authority. Leverage was not considered in the terms of the rookie contract she signed in 2024. It is a cage masquerading as an opportunity, just like every other rookie contract in the WNBA. Restricted free agency that prevents her from proving herself, team options that keep her committed to the franchise, and a framework that is specifically designed to restrict player movement. Clark's options are limited, even if she wanted change. She is unable to compel a transaction. She is unable to renegotiate for her value. Furthermore, she is unable to jump to a higher salary elsewhere, not in a league where a select few have the privilege of freedom rather than it being a right. These guidelines were established by a collective bargaining agreement that was inked long before Clark rose to prominence as the most marketable player in women's basketball history, prior to her demonstrating that a single athlete might significantly impact a sport's overall profitability. She is now constrained by antiquated terminology that not only minimize her worth but also disregard the new reality she established. The WNBA, meanwhile, takes use of the Clark effect. Records of attendance were broken. Sales of merchandise are skyrocketing. Revenue from sponsorships is soaring. The woman at the center of it all, however, is nonetheless constrained by a contract that denies her the freedom, compensation, or autonomy that her male colleagues in other leagues have. Legal experts refer to this disparity as a recurring theme in women's sports. However, Clark's situation is unique. No one has ever done it before. She is more than just a talented athlete. She is the profit margin, the storyline, and the brand. And one question becomes more pressing in her thoughts as she begins to fully comprehend the significance of that fact. Why should the game's best players remain silent while everyone else receives compensation? And how did a dispute much larger than basketball start over a single question? Hold on tight. The true tale is only beginning to come to light. The burden of being more than just a participant. Caitlin Clark was more than just the Indiana Fever star by the summer of 2025. She was who they were. Her name had come to represent the WNBA's comeback. Her visage features regularly in highlight reels, interviews, and advertising. Even though the spotlight appeared brilliant from the outside, few people could withstand its heat for very long. A career in coaching, where a vision could mold teams without the constant pressures of playing, had always been suggested by Clark's understanding of the game and her innate skill on the court. She was still in uniform at the time, though, and was expected to serve as the league's main spokeswoman, ambassador, and symbol of advancement in addition to giving an outstanding performance. It involved more than just team leadership. It involved bearing a whole action on her shoulders. Pressures come with that responsibility. There was nothing that the stat sheet could record. Each and every public comment was examined. Each act was connected to the larger story of the WNBA. There were stories on every day off that speculated about her future, happiness, or health. For Clark, it was a never-ending mental endurance test that seldom ever let her just take pleasure in the game she loved. The transformation within the Fever organization had been abrupt and significant. Sponsorship teams, media divisions, and ticket offices were all refocused on the Clark era. Although it brought new life to the franchise, it also brought about subtle and occasionally unsettling changes in team dynamics. Relationships with teammates, coaches, and even the front office may suffer as soon as one player takes center stage in a whole enterprise. Clark was left with unanswered questions. Did the management of the Fever share her long-term goals? Did the coaching staff know how to handle her mental load in addition to her minutes? Was the culture of the company really designed to help someone in her particular role? Or was it just intended to optimize the advantages of her notoriety? She was aware that team cohesiveness was more than just a catchphrase. The unseen glue prevented the season from breaking apart. Pressure, additionally, as her individual achievements increased, it became more difficult to strike a balance between her own attention and the team's overall identity. She wasn't only a part of the craze, as seen by every sold-out stadium, every increase in TV ratings, and every sponsorship announcement. The fever was her. In those circumstances, leadership demanded more than just talent. It required emotional intelligence, political savvy, and organizational support that, in Clark's opinion, occasionally fell short of the burden she was expected to bear. And gradually, she started to question whether continuing in this position would require too many sacrifices done of herself in order to play the game. What did Caitlin ultimately understand? Then, and might it be the instant she leaves for good? Continue to observe. When the game is no longer sufficient. Caitlin Clark was more than simply a famous athlete by 2025. She served as a real-life example of what women's basketball may achieve. However, her knowledge of the machine she was operating inside developed along with her notoriety. Contractual arrangements, league policies, and decision-making procedures weren't merely theoretical guidelines. Her work, her salary, and her sense of power were all shaped by these everyday realities. And more, those facts didn't match her vision. For her future, few rookies ever comprehend the business aspect of the WNBA like Clark did. She saw how player possibilities were decided by strategic decisions, how league leadership set the tone, and how elite players had limited opportunity to genuinely direct their own careers. Playing by rules she hadn't created was necessary to remain in that system. Regulations that, in her opinion, weren't changing fast enough to keep up with the expansion of the sport or her own goals. In the meantime, things were shifting outside of the WNBA. Never before had women's sports been more well-known, more popular, or more profitable. All sports were seeing an influx of new sponsors. Globally, women's leagues were growing. Additionally, media attention was reaching previously inaccessible audiences. That meant something revolutionary to athletes like Clark. Genuine substitutes. She had amassed a following of millions on social media. Followers that kept up with her every action, every word, and every moment rather than only watching her games. Power came along with that type of reach. She didn't need authorization from any league office to start her own projects, work directly with businesses, or enter whole new areas. For the first time, a WNBA player might remain important without the league. Even corporate America had taken note. Clark had more than just side revenue from the sponsorship deals on his table. They frequently had a higher value than her real player. Pay, lifestyle advertisements, tech businesses, clothing, and shoes. These collaborations provided both artistic freedom and financial stability. And if she had enough of them, she would be able to design her career without being constrained by antiquated pay restrictions and strict contracts. However, money wasn't the only factor here. She was starting to feel the pressure of full-blown athletic demands in every aspect of her life. She was reminding everyone that she wasn't just speaking for herself with every appearance, interview, and headline. She was standing in for women's basketball's future. It could be exciting to have that kind of responsibility. It can be suffocating as well. For Clark, it was getting harder to ignore the question. If there were more opportunities outside of the WNBA, why would she continue to play a game where she had everything to lose and not nearly enough to gain when she had greater freedom, reward, and control? Could all we believe to be true about Caitlin Clark's legacy be altered by the truth about her next move? This is something you should not miss. What the crown weighs. Caitlin Clark was much more than just a basketball player by the middle of 2025. She served as a live symbol of the growth of women's basketball. Every match she participated in, every statement she made, and every action she took in public were interpreted as a reflection on the state and prospect of the sport. Although her presence on the court was thrilling, it also changed the opinion of the league. The sport was flourishing when Clark took off. Questions sprang up whenever she faltered even a little. There were responsibilities associated with being the face of a movement that went well beyond the three-point line. There were halftime interviews, youth clinics, charity galas, business events, sponsorship shots, and countless opportunities for autographs. She was filmed not just at arenas from Indianapolis to Seattle, but also at airports, dining establishments, and get-togethers with family. In only a few minutes, every choice, personal or professional, could be examined online. It was no longer merely a job. Even when the spotlight was off, the audience continued to watch the display. The weight of those demands was great for a sportswoman who longed for time to hone her skills and live her life apart from the commotion. Her thoughts began to focus more on her family. She lost out on festivities, holidays, and extended periods of time spent apart from her supportive network. She was reminded by friends, mentors, and a strong support system that happiness extended beyond MVP awards and titles. In addition, it was about harmony, balance, and having room to develop outside of the game. The business realities, however, were equally urgent. The money she brought in for the league was incompatible with the WNBA contracts, which were legally binding, limited, and small in comparison to her market value. Legal experts publicly questioned whether the building could endure the pressure from sportsmen like Clark, whose reputation was far stronger than what the salary cap could provide. Her playing revenue had already surpassed by her endorsements, and that disparity was growing. In addition to offering more money, shoe deals, media initiatives, and creative collaborations also gave people greater authority. Opportunities in innovation, media, and business beckoned beyond the realm of sports. She was a logical partner for startups in women's health, sports analytics, and performance technology. She was as useful in boardrooms as she was on the court because of her command of the game's technical aspects and her popularity among fans. When pitching her for television and documentary projects, entertainment professionals envision her as a spokesperson for a new generation of female athletes. During private discussions, some people close to Clark openly questioned whether her leaving was a true danger. It was the WNBA's inability to change quickly enough. Losing her would be more significant than losing a famous person. It would indicate that the league was unable to retain the very players on whom it had staked its future. So, what do you believe truly pushed Clark to step away? Politics, pressure, or something more profound? Your opinions would be greatly appreciated. For more WNBA stories, remember to like, share, and subscribe.